Hello everyone, my name is Christian and today I would like to share with you 18 essential things that I'm looking at when buying a new vehicle. These things are based on my own experience dealing with cars as well as research into the topics. Before I start, I'd like to apologize for the length of this presentation, but there's so much stuff to talk about that it couldn't be squeezed in 10 minutes. And if you have the patience to listen to the end, you will learn how to choose a vehicle that will offer you good value for the money. From the beginning, I'd like to point out that there is no such thing as a perfect car. All cars have limitations and no car can do everything for everyone. On top of that, many aspects are a matter of preference, and I won't argue with that. Therefore, here's what we will be looking at. 1. Needs and wants. 2. Vehicle type and size. 3. Brand and model recommended. 4. Propulsion. 5. Engine and transmission. 6. Drivetrain. 7. Chassis and suspension. 8. Trim level. 9. Design cycles. 10. Resale value. 11. Safety. 12. Reliability. 13. Maintenance schedule. 14. Fuel economy and range. 15. Country of origin. 16. Buying versus leasing. 17. Insurance and registration. 18. Length of ownership. 1. Needs and wants. The first and most important question is, why am I buying this vehicle and what do I need or want from it? In the needs category, there are statements like, I need a vehicle that will reliably take me from point A to point B without rattles, noises, or other problems that will ruin my commute. Will not cost more than X dollars or my monthly payment will not exceed Y dollars. Has low maintenance costs. Has good fuel economy. Can seat so many people or pets. Can handle icy roads and potholes and has good ground clearance. Has so much space for carrying stuff, can tow so much weight, has good resale value so I can recover a larger portion of my money when I trade it in, has low insurance costs, has good safety ratings, will not have problems or recalls that, even under warranty, would require me to spend time at the dealership, has comfortable seats and good legroom, headroom, etc., has reasonably good power, acceleration and braking, and can handle challenging situations on the road. Is good looking, has a nice color, is not quirky, and I generally feel good about owning it. In the wants category, on the other hand, there are statements like, I want a vehicle that is faster or larger than most other vehicles. Is a luxury vehicle so I can impress my family, friends, and co-workers. Has exceptional payload, towing, or off-roading capabilities. Has leather interior and the latest gadgets. Is of a certain brand. Is made in US or by a US car company. I think a picture is starting to emerge. If you put down the things that you really need versus things you want, that in itself will guide you to certain vehicles as opposed to others. Even some of the needs listed here may come from wants that happened in other areas of your life. For example, if you need a certain towing capacity because you have a boat that you are moving around, the decision to own a boat is affecting your choice when it comes to buying a car. 2. Vehicle type and size. Once you've identified your needs, the next step is to select the type of vehicle. In this category, we have sedans, SUVs, wagons, minivans, and pickup trucks. There are also full-size vans, but those are more for commercial uses. Each type has advantages and disadvantages, but I believe the most versatile vehicles are SUVs and wagons. Especially these days, fewer and fewer people are buying sedans due to their limitations. Next comes the size. There are compact, small, mid-size, and large vehicles. It is a known fact that the size of a certain model keeps growing over time, so what yesterday was considered small today looks more like mid-size. However, Unless you need to transport more than 5 people or a third row, small and mid-size are going to be your best bet. Still, there are some vehicles in the compact category that are worth mentioning. No vehicle is perfect for everything, but some features offer increased utility. For example, a hatchback or tailgate will provide more space for storing items and easy access for loading and unloading things. Folding rear seats allow the rear cargo space to be extended even more. Sliding doors are useful for entering and exiting the vehicle in tight parking spaces and are good for families with children. Roof rails and crossbars allow the placement of a roof box or other hardware for carrying light but voluminous items. A truck bed can be used to transport construction material or sports equipment, but things have to be properly secured. Increased ground clearance allows you to travel on rough or snow-covered roads without damaging the vehicle's underbody. A higher seating position will give you better road visibility and facilitate ingress and egress, but only up to a point. A larger gas tank will provide a longer range and fewer stops to gas stations, everything else being the same. A smaller vehicle is easier to fit into parking spaces or a typical size garage. 3. Brand and model. There are established brands, Ford, Chevy, Honda, and newer brands, Tesla, Rivian, VinFast, etc. Most of the newcomers are only producing electric cars. There's so much to be said about brands, but I'll cut to the chase and give you my opinion. You should buy a Toyota, Honda, Subaru, Mazda, or Ford. And not every model they produce, only some. Let me give you some reasons. Toyota is the established leader of reliability and resale value. They generally produce good vehicles, although their styling is bland. Not everything they do is perfect, but on average there's a better chance you will not go wrong with a Toyota. Particular models that I would consider are Camry for a mid-size sedan, Corolla Cross for a compact SUV, RAV4 for a small SUV, although the styling is terrible, Highlander or Grand Highlander for a mid-size SUV, 4Runner for an off-road mid-size SUV, and Sienna for a minivan. Honda has reasonably good quality and driving performance. On average, their interiors are better than Toyota's, but there are exceptions. Particular models: Civic for a small sedan, Accord for a mid-size sedan, CR-V for a small SUV, Pilot and Passport for a mid-size SUV. The new Passport promises to be a cool vehicle, Odyssey for a minivan, and Ridgeline for a mid-size pickup truck. Subaru has vehicles that are very practical and versatile, with excellent performance in winter conditions. Their styling is not outstanding, but they come with standard all-wheel drive. They have reasonably good resale value. Particular models: Forester for a small-size SUV, Outback for a wagon, and Ascent for a mid-size SUV. The Ascent had problems when it came out, but I believe they have been fixed by now. Mazda has some good-looking and well-appointed vehicles. I will mention, though, that their styling may be less appealing to male buyers. They have good handling and, with some exceptions, reasonably good reliability. Their resale value is not as good as Toyota's, but not the worst in the industry. The CX-5 is the only one I can recommend for a small-size SUV. Ford has been in the truck business for years, and they put a lot of effort into designing their trucks. Their other vehicles have been less successful, with the notable exception of the new Bronco. They have reasonably good styling. The resale value for trucks is good. Models to consider: Bronco for a mid-size off-road SUV, Maverick for a small truck, and F-150, F-250 for a large truck. What about other brands? While there are definitely some vehicles you should consider, like the Jeep Wrangler, notable for its high resale value, I don't see as much value in those, but this is just my personal opinion. 4. Propulsion. Here we're talking about what makes a vehicle move. Internal combustion, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or electric? Electric cars are a popular discussion subject these days. They are pushed by governments as the solution to global warming and pollution, while their negative aspects are ignored. It's possible that sometime in the future, electric vehicles will overcome their drawbacks and become mainstream. For example, if fusion reactors become a reality and energy becomes very cheap, electric vehicles may naturally fit in that environment. In the meantime, EVs are heavy, expensive, have low ranges that get even lower in cold weather, take a long time to charge, require trip planning, lose their values fast, wear tires quickly due to the heavy weight, may have less available interior space due to the battery, and so on. I heard that if you use a charging station, you may end up paying more per mile than for a gas vehicle. I was wondering, if more and more EVs are on the road, what will happen to the price of gasoline versus the price of a kilowatt hour? Also, they rely on government subsidies, tax rebates and credits, carbon credits, etc., which tells us they are not ready to stand in the market by themselves. While I don't disagree that EVs may have some qualities, acceleration, technology, etc., for the moment I think you should stay away from them until they overcome their issues. Plug-in hybrids are also expensive relative to what they offer and not very popular, so let's focus on regular hybrids. They have a few advantages: higher mileage, more power and torque, and sometimes better reliability compared to their gas counterparts. However, they are more expensive and, depending on how the powertrain is designed, may have some strange driving characteristics. For example, the gas engine may kick in at any time and the revs go from 0 to 3000 rpm in an instant, unlike a gas engine with a more predictable behavior. That aside, let's look at some numbers. Specifically, a gas version Honda CR-V has a combined mileage of 28 miles per gallon and costs, let's say, $35,000 out of the door, with a total acquisition cost, including tax and interest, of $38,580. The hybrid version of the same vehicle has a combined mileage of 37 miles per gallon and costs $39,000 out of the door, with a total acquisition cost of $42,989. The difference is $4,409. If the gas costs $3 per gallon on average, the cost of driving 1 mile with the first vehicle is $0.10714, while the cost of driving 1 mile with the second vehicle is $0.08108. Therefore, for each traveled mile, the hybrid vehicle saves $0.02606 compared with the gas one. The miles required to break even can be calculated as $4,409 divided by 0.02606 per mile equals 169,186 miles, which means, everything else being equal, you will have to drive approximately 170,000 miles before you can recover the difference. Or, put another way, chances are you will never recover the extra money you paid for the hybrid. Granted, there may be a difference in the resale value, with some hybrids having higher resale value than their gas counterparts, but you don't know what will happen with the vehicle, how long you will keep it, so the safer bet is to go for the gas-only version. 5. Engine and transmission. We're talking about things like number of cylinders, displacement, naturally aspirated or turbo, standard automatic transmission, CVT transmission, dual clutch transmission, or manual transmission. 4 and 6 cylinder engines are okay. Avoid the 3-cylinder engine. Usually, 4-cylinder engines are easier to maintain and provide better fuel economy, but they are not as smooth and powerful as 6-cylinder ones. Turbo engines are okay too, but they operate at higher temperatures and pressures, which may result in shorter life and more frequent maintenance. For example, the spark plugs may require to be changed at 45,000 miles instead of 100,000 miles. Also, a turbo engine will not have the same linear torque delivery curve and responsiveness of a comparable six-cylinder. I think you've all heard about turbo lag. It can be really annoying in certain vehicles. In conclusion, a higher displacement, naturally aspirated engine coupled with a 6, 8, or 10-speed standard transmission may be the best combination, but these days it's hard to avoid CVTs as more and more OEMs have adopted them. However, CVTs have improved over time and they are more refined and with fewer problems as in the past. Hybrid vehicles have a combination of an ICE, internal combustion engine, and one or more electric motors that assist the engine, especially during acceleration and braking. They are coupled with eCVTs, electric continuously variable transmission, and use a battery to store and release energy as needed. The battery is smaller than the one in an electric car. Some hybrids allow the car to be driven in purely electric mode, without the engine running, but only for short distances. When considering a vehicle's performance, it's not enough to look just at engine power and torque. As this following calculation shows, there are many other parameters that contribute to how a car feels: mass, engine torque speed curve, transmission gear ratios and shift logic, differential ratio, and wheel size, just to name the most important ones. 6. Drivetrain. Here we're talking about front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, full-time versus part-time, high-low transfer case, locking differentials, limited slip differentials, dynamic vectoring, and so on. There are more and more options and increased complexity. The short take here is that if you don't need traction on all four wheels because you live in a warm climate, front-wheel drive will be your best bet due to the simplicity and lower cost. Also, you get higher mileage. On the contrary, if you live in a place with a lot of snow and icy roads, travel on muddy or low traction roads, or have a sloped driveway, all-wheel drive is the better option. All-wheel drive by itself does not guarantee the vehicle will do better in slippery conditions. You also need good quality tires and must drive according to the road conditions. Full-time all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive is preferred because you don't have to engage the vehicle in that mode. Most all-wheel drive vehicles are on demand, which means the rear wheels are powered only when needed, the rest of the time being spent in front-wheel drive mode. 7. Chassis and suspension. The chassis is the load-bearing structure of a vehicle. We are talking about unibody, body-on-frame, or skateboard designs. The unibody design offers a better ride and handling on paved roads, while the body-on-frame design is better for towing and off-roading. The skateboard design is specific to electric vehicles and is simple and elegant in its execution, contributing to a low center of gravity for the vehicle. The suspension is the system by which the wheels are attached to the vehicle while having several degrees of freedom to move in regards to the steering input and road imperfections. It allows the vehicle to absorb the bumps and maintain a stable position relative to the moving direction. Wheels can have independent suspension. Each wheel can articulate independently of the others, although the sway bar introduces reaction forces, or either the front and or rear wheels are linked together by a solid steel axle. Independent suspensions are better for normal driving conditions, while solid axles may offer an advantage for more extreme off-roading. Stay away from active or ride height adjusting suspensions as they have increased complexity and ways in which they can fail. When they do, they are very expensive to fix or replace. 8. Trim level. What is better to buy? 2 bags of candies at $5 each, or 1 bag for $10 with 3 times as many candies as the smaller bag? The answer is obvious. Still, This situation is similar to what car companies are doing by offering high trim levels. The price of the highest trim level may be more than the base trim level of a larger and more valuable vehicle. Also, the difference in price between a higher and lower trim is much more than what the additional features are worth, both in terms of utility and also in terms of the car maker's costs. So the best choice in most cases is to go for the base trim. Yes, you will give up some conveniences, but sometimes that may be a good thing. Here are a few examples. Higher trims may automatically include a sunroof which you may not be using at all. Sunroofs also impede on the headroom and may be prone to leaking over time. Higher trims may come with larger, more expensive wheels and tires. The tires will have a lower aspect ratio, which results in a harsher ride and more damage to the wheels from potholes and curbs. Let's look at a practical example. Here's how much wheels and tires cost for two different trims of the same vehicle. Honda CR-V LX all-wheel drive. Wheel $75. Michelin Defender 2 tire $227 before taxes. Honda CR-V Sport Touring Hybrid all-wheel drive. Wheel $412. Michelin Defender 2 tire $255 before taxes. Higher trims lose more value over time than the base trim. Looking at comparable 2019 model trims, according to KBB and taking the total acquisition cost into account, the 5-year depreciation is $13,817 for the base trim and $18,945 for the highest trim. Even though, in terms of percentages, the retained values are close, in terms of actual numbers, you are losing over $5,000 more when buying the highest trim versus the base trim. There are cases, however, when it makes sense to go for a higher trim, like for example when it offers a better engine-transmission combination, all-wheel drive, or any other feature you consider important. That is, of course, as long as the difference in price is reasonable. If the base trim does not offer what you want, and you have to pay a lot more to go to the one that does, perhaps you should consider another vehicle. 9. Design cycles. A well-established model, like the Camry for example, has a limited life on the market in its current form. After 5, 6 or more years, the vehicle is updated significantly and released as a new model. This is also known as a major model change. Normally, halfway through this interval, the vehicle is given a facelift or minor model change. Why is this important? We have to be aware where in the cycle a certain vehicle is. At the beginning of the cycle, vehicles may have quality issues due to design or manufacturing errors. As the time goes by, these errors are found and fixed by the automaker. The minor model change can be a point where some beneficial changes are introduced, like more sound insulation, increased engine power, and so on. Conversely, if the vehicle is close to the end of the cycle, it may be wise to wait for the next generation. Therefore, the best time to buy a vehicle is perhaps 1 year after the minor change or 1 to 2 years before the next major change. The availability of a certain model usually starts at the end of the previous year. For example, a 2025 model may become available for purchase in September 2024. So if you are buying around that time, should you get a late 2024 model or an early 2025? While there may be incentives for the 2024 model, also consider that the resale value is tied to the model year and not the exact time the vehicle was purchased. If you sell the car after 5 years, a 2025 model will bring you more money than a 2024, even though the difference in the date of production may be just a few weeks. 10. Resale value. Brands that offer good quality, style, and functionality will keep their value better over time. When researching resale values, please consider they are estimates based on past performance. Nobody knows what the market and economic conditions will be 5 years from now, and things can change fast in the automotive industry. If a model is marked to be discontinued, this can have a negative effect on its resale value unless it's some sort of iconic car that people suddenly want to have as soon as it's not available anymore. One important aspect here is that resale value rankings are based on percentages and not absolute numbers. They normally take into account only the new versus old base price without considering taxes, interest, and other items. For example, a $50,000 car with a 60% resale value will be worth $30,000 after 5 years. That means it lost $20,000 in base price. On the other hand, a $20,000 car with a 40% resale value will be worth $8,000 after 5 years, losing only $12,000 in base price. So in absolute terms, the more expensive vehicle is losing more money after 5 years, even though it's rated better. Resale value is, in my opinion, one of the most important things to consider when buying a new vehicle. A high resale value will ensure you can recover as much of your money in case you decide to sell the car for whatever reason, or if the car is lost due to theft or accident. And remember, the resale value is entirely determined by market perception and not what you think about the vehicle. You may be entirely satisfied with it, but the resale value may still be low if the market perceives it as such. This table shows the resale value for a few vehicles. Please do your own research for the specific brand and model you're looking at. 11. Safety. Safety is a general term that describes how well the passengers are protected in a crash or other emergency situations. Practically, it is measured by NHTSA, IIHS, and other organizations by subjecting the vehicle to a number of tests in order to provide the buyer with a general assessment or rating of that specific vehicle. The tests are evolving over time and new tests are routinely added. If a vehicle rates poorly in a new test, the car maker will ensure that the next generation of same vehicle is improved in regards to that test. The point here is to understand that a low rating in a certain area, for example in the small overlap crash test, doesn't necessarily mean the vehicle is unsafe to drive, just that it may perform worse than other vehicles in certain accidents. Also, real-life accidents can be very different from the controlled conditions in which testing takes place. Obviously, no vehicle is perfectly safe, but choosing a vehicle with higher ratings may improve your chances of not being harmed during an accident. I cannot move on without mentioning the impact of vehicle weight and size on safety. As I mentioned before, crash tests are conducted in controlled conditions either by the vehicle hitting a fixed barrier while moving or by a moving sled hitting a stationary vehicle. In real life though, when two vehicles collide front-on, the one with the higher mass has, in general, an advantage over the one with the lower mass. The shock will be stronger and the crumpling more severe for the smaller vehicle. Also, the smaller vehicle will be hit higher relative to the driver's seating position. So to put it bluntly, the smaller vehicle loses. This has generated a trend in which drivers feel more secure in large vehicles, pushing them to buy larger and larger ones. The automakers are happy to oblige. Let's look at the weight of some popular vehicles, including electric ones. It's a race to the top. However, tall and heavy vehicles have their own drawbacks. They are generally more difficult to handle in emergency maneuvers and more prone to rolling over. So what are we to do? As usually, try to find the best compromise. Don't go for the lightest or heaviest vehicle, but for one in between with good crash ratings. You may also want to research which vehicles have the highest and lowest numbers of fatalities for every 1 million miles driven. You will be surprised to find some large and heavy vehicles on the high fatalities list. And yes, you see where electric vehicles are standing. In a world where more is better, weight is their redeeming quality. If you want to buy an EV for that reason, I understand. But the idea that we are saving the earth by driving 7,000 pounds vehicles around seems ridiculous to me. 12. Reliability. Reliability is a complex subject, but in practical terms, it means that the vehicle will not break over a reasonable amount of time or mileage. Then, if and when it breaks, the difficulty and cost of repairs are also important. For example, it's one thing if the sun visor falls off, and a totally different thing if the transmission fails. All failures that occur under warranty are covered by the automaker, but that could be a hassle even if you don't have to pay money. Recalls, on the other hand, are field actions initiated by the automaker, usually with the involvement of NHTSA, to correct defects that could affect the safety of passengers or other people. Recalls are not bound by warranty limits and can happen any time in the life of the vehicle. The repairs are free of charge. A vehicle with a perceived higher reliability will also have a higher resale value in general. 13. Maintenance schedule. The maintenance schedule is what the owner has to do and how often in order to maintain the vehicle in good shape. Oil changes, filter changes, tire rotations, and so on are part of the maintenance schedule. Pay attention to any uncommon items like greasing the propeller shafts, tightening the undercarriage bolts, or replacing the spark plugs more often. It's a good idea to read the vehicle's owner manual, available online, before purchasing it so you can become familiar with the schedule and spot any unusual items. Still part of the maintenance, but not in the schedule, are items like tire replacement, brake pads and rotors replacement, suspension parts replacement, struts, shocks, and so on. These are considered wear and tear items, and it is assumed that you will replace them when it becomes necessary. That has to do a lot with your driving habits and road conditions. For example, accelerating and braking harder will wear the tires and brakes faster. So if you want to extend the life of those parts, adopt a softer driving style. That will also reduce the wear on other components, engine, transmission, driveline, and improve the fuel economy. If you want to have a proper functioning and safe vehicle, do not skip or delay the maintenance and repairs. 14. Fuel economy and range. This video focuses on traditional gas vehicles, so I will not discuss the complex subject of EV charging costs. Fuel costs are a sensitive topic, and the gas price is always out there for everybody to see it. Vehicles are rated based on their combined miles per gallon, MPG. Just keep in mind that your actual MPG may be higher or lower than what the vehicle sticker shows. Still, how much does it cost per month to operate your vehicle? It depends on how much you drive, your vehicle's average fuel consumption, and the average price of gas over the time under consideration. The formula is rather simple. All variables below are average. Monthly fuel cost equals miles driven per year divided by 12 months divided by MPG times gas price per gallon. The following table shows the monthly fuel cost for different usage scenarios. You could pay as little as $31.25 per month or as much as $500 per month given the limits of this table and assuming a blanket $3 per gallon gas price. But most drivers will probably find themselves in the middle of the table, driving 10 to 15,000 miles per year in a vehicle going 20 to 30 miles per gallon. Under this assumption, the cost varies between $83.33 and $187.50, a roughly $100 difference. This difference pales in comparison with the total monthly cost of the loan, insurance, registration, and maintenance. So while fuel costs are important, they should not be the main factor in deciding which vehicle to buy. One note: if your vehicle requires premium fuel, the fuel cost will get proportionally higher. Range is how many miles your vehicle will travel on average on a full tank of gas. It can be calculated based on the formula. range equals 0.85 times fuel tank capacity in gallons times average MPG, assuming that you want to have at least 15% gas left in the tank before refueling, which may or may not coincide with the yellow low fuel light coming on. Example: on a Honda CR-V LX all-wheel drive, the fuel tank capacity is 14 gallons and the average combined MPG is 28 miles per gallon. Official spec, actual MPG may be different. Therefore, the range is 0.85 times 28 times 14 equals 333 miles, rounded. What is the minimum acceptable range? That depends on the particular usage of the vehicle, but I think it's good to have at least a 400 miles range. Hybrid vehicles generally have longer ranges than their gas equivalents. 15. Country of origin. The first question is, are vehicles made in certain countries better than vehicles made in other countries, even if they are sold by the same automaker? The politically correct answer is no. They're all the same, and what matters is the brand and design, not where it's made. But in reality, where the vehicle is made can make a difference. I will let you do your own research into this subject instead of presenting my opinion. And let's not forget that the quality of a vehicle is largely determined by three factors: the quality of design, the quality of components, and the quality of the assembly process. The second question is, should I buy a vehicle made by a US automaker so the profits stay here and contribute to our economy? Not necessarily. Foreign companies are publicly traded, and if you want, you can buy their stocks and get a share of their profits. True, there are majority shareholders that could be local, but if you're worrying about their profits and are waiting for the trickle down to happen, you have the wrong priorities. The third question is, should I buy a vehicle made in US so the automotive jobs will stay here? As it stands, many foreign automakers have opened shop in US to avoid tariffs or for other reasons. It's true, buying a car made in Japan or Mexico means US workers will have less work. However, we live in a global economy, and if we import cars from another country, we in turn export other products to them. We are yet to see, though, the effects of the new tariffs and how they will impact the availability and price of both foreign and domestic models. Lastly, the final assembly plant location is not the whole story. You should also look at where components are sourced. In fact, there are foreign brand vehicles made in US that have a larger share of US sourced components than comparable domestic brand vehicles. To put everything in a nutshell, I don't have brand loyalty. I buy what I think is best for me at the moment. This may seem selfish, but acting in one's own interest will force the car companies to produce better vehicles in the long run. 16. Buying versus leasing. Leasing will generally require lower monthly payments, but in the end it will cost you more. The other advantage of leasing is that you can try the car before committing to buying it. But leasing has a lot of hidden costs and may require you to pay a lump sum at the end of the contract just to turn the vehicle in. Yes, because the dealer will rack up costs to fix the car, like minor damage or replacing the windshield, in addition to extra mileage costs and so on. Many times you don't have the option to sell the vehicle anywhere else other than the OEM's dealership network, meaning they can offer you whatever they want for your vehicle. I only leased 2 cars in my family and both experiences weren't too great. But if you get a very low monthly payment with a reasonable allowed mileage, it may be okay. Just remember, don't put any money down other than the minimum required by the financial institution. If you put a lot of money down to lower your payment, that money will be lost if the car is totaled because all the insurance payment will go to the bank. Now let's talk about buying. There are important things here: negotiated price, finance terms, and dealer options. The negotiated price is what you agree to pay to the dealership. You should consult sources like KBB and others before making an offer. Also, I suggest making an offer for the out-of-the-door price instead of the base price because this way you will avoid haggling for all the line items. Yes, those items will still be on: taxes, registration, license plate and documentation fees, but you will know beforehand what you're paying. Do not include the trade-in, if you have any, in this negotiation. That should be done separately. And absolutely do not negotiate monthly payments because they hide all the things I mentioned above, plus others, into a single number that you can't easily compare or understand. Financing terms refer to the interest rate and the length of the contract. You have little control on the rates, but you can shop around at banks and credit unions to see if you can get better rates than what the dealership is offering. If the automaker is offering a low rate to move their cars off the lot, you can't beat that. As for the length of ownership, I don't recommend going over 72 months or 6 years. The total interest paid over the length of the contract can be easily found using any online calculator. I made one myself in Excel just to see how the numbers are calculated. Here are 3 examples. $30,000 borrowed at 2.9% for 5 years, $2,263 in interest. $30,000 borrowed at 5.9% for 5 years, $4,715 in interest. $30,000 borrowed at 5.9% for 6 years, $5,509 in interest. As you can see, the interest is racking up quickly as the rates and length go up. However, we cannot ignore the impact of inflation. If the inflation rate is taken into account, and assuming your income gets adjusted for that, the real interest rate will be the loan rate minus the inflation rate. So if the inflation rate is 3%, the real interest rate will be minus 0.1% and 2.9% respectively. If the real interest rate is negative, it's actually better to have a longer loan term. And even though nobody knows what future inflation rates will be, it is assumed that they will stay positive due to policy reasons. Lastly, refuse any and all additional items the dealer may offer you at a cost: extended warranty, gap insurance, paint and fabric protection, tire protection, and so on. These are easy ways for the dealership to make money on things you most probably will never need. And even if you do, the cost would be less than what you are required to pay up front. Don't forget, all these additional items are rolled into the loan and you will pay interest on them too. 17. Insurance and registration. Insurance is required by law. In addition, for a financed vehicle, you will have to carry full insurance as required by the bank. Insurance rates are based on a ton of factors, so one thing I will mention here is that a cheaper, smaller vehicle may be more expensive to insure than a larger one. The reason is that the larger vehicle may be safer and protect its occupants better in case of an accident, or it comes with more standard safety features. I recommend getting a quote from your insurance company before buying a vehicle so you know what to expect. Another thing is the so-called rate creep. Insurance companies are initially quoting a low price to new customers to get their business, but they rack up the rates significantly after that. Registration is required in each state and provides you with a license plate. Registration costs are generally proportional with the cost of the vehicle or the base model of that vehicle. An older vehicle will cost less to register up to a point. EVs may have higher registration costs because the state needs to compensate for the lost revenue in the form of gas taxes. 18. Length of ownership. Now that you bought your dream car, how long should you keep it? 10, 15, 20 years? No, do not keep it longer than 5 or 6 years. Why? Because that's the time when problems start showing up. Vehicle reliability is a myth. All cars will have problems sooner or later. And even if they don't, you still have to deal with more serious maintenance, replacing tires, brake pads and rotors, suspension, and so on. And, depending on where you live, the car will begin to be affected by rust, becoming unsightly and promoting other components to fail. In addition, new cars incorporate new technology. This can be good and bad, but usually they become safer due to the more stringent tests they have to pass. So, are you willing to deal with all the problems that may come up? The alternative is to sell or trade the car before you have to invest money and time to keep it running. Yes, you may save some money if you keep it longer, but it's not worth the aggravation. And if you bought a car with a good resale value, you will recover at least half of what you paid for. The difference? Consider it as cost of doing business. If you have a reasonably good income, you need a reliable car to go to work and everywhere else, and you don't want to constantly worry about car problems. Yes, perform the scheduled maintenance and keep your car in good shape, but don't do anything beyond that. And that's it. I wish you good luck on your next purchase and hope the vehicle will be all you want it to be. Thank you for watching this video. Please press the like button if you found it useful and subscribe to my new channel, The 10 Minute Point, for future informational videos. Have a great day.